Hello, weather friends, and welcome to a Wednesday night. Always nice to see you here for the weather show. I want to thank meteorologist Robert Johnson for filling in last week as I had some time off to head out to the Midwest. I was actually in the Southwest, I guess, Dallas, Texas for weather training. And we've got all kinds of new things coming up in the next few months that you're going to be seeing around here. So I'm so excited to show that all to you. If you're joining us live on the ABC11.com or the ABC11 app, thank you for spending part of your Wednesday night with us. Or if you're watching later on, maybe on YouTube, thanks for spending part of your week with us. And we are going to talk all things weather over the next half hour. Let's check our weather headlines tonight. The three big things. First of all, spotty showers are around right now. If you're new to the program, we always give you the forecast first, and we'll talk about the showers that are out there. Everybody wants to talk about Helene, and we're going to talk all things Helene, the biggest hurricane that could hit the United States in a while, and it's looking like a major hurricane, Category 3, possibly Category 4 as it makes landfall. So we'll talk about Helene coming up. And finally, what's that smell? Viewer question tonight has to do with the smell of rain and why does it have a smell? We're going to break that down for you in the viewer question this week. But let's get things started with that forecast tonight. And we're looking live at radar. We do see just some pop-up showers, some heavier thunderstorms out in the Triad. Our First Alert Doppler network. We have 3 live radars we monitor right now. We've got the one through the central part of the area. This one's out in the Triad, and it's picking up some thunderstorms northeast of Greensboro and even some showers and storms up through Person County. Our southwestern radar had some strong showers earlier. Those have weakened. Still a few showers along the line of Sampson County and Cumberland County. Couple of pop-up showers in Johnston County and some heavier showers, rumble or two of thunder in Halifax and Northampton County. That's going to clip Roanoke Rapids over the next half hour, so it is 7:02 on Wednesday night. Expect those showers in Roanoke Rapids around 7:30, and if you're watching later in the week, those showers are done. We'll show you what's happening as far as our First Alert Doppler net. We'll put it into motion, and this is our color vision deficiency radar. For those who are colorblind and can't see the difference between red and green, and there's about 10% of our population that has that problem, we've actually developed a radar that makes it easier to see where the heaviest rain is. And this is on ABC11.com, and you'll notice as we put it into motion, that line out toward the Triad is pushing up to the north. The line that's headed toward Roanoke Rapids I talked about is headed in there. And we'll continue to see just a few pop-up showers until about 9, 10 o'clock, and then we lose the energy in the atmosphere as the sun goes down and things start to quiet down. Live look on our Pendo Skycam, our newest Skycam, and right out here, looking out in the distance, that's the tops of those thunderstorms that are up in Halifax and Northampton counties. It's just a long ways away from downtown Raleigh, but it's 81 degrees right now in the capital city. Mostly cloudy. It's been very warm. It's been very humid. It's going to stay humid as we head through the day tomorrow. Regional satellite radar perspective shows the showers around here, shows heavier rain out to the west tonight. If we zoom it out, this is a stationary front. We'll talk more about it coming up in old school weather. But the rain that's falling in the mountains right now, nothing to do with Helene. It's actually from a frontal boundary that's stuck and all the moisture is just running right up it. And that's triggering heavy showers. That's bad news because they could see an additional 6 to 12, even 14 inches of rain in the mountains on top of the rain that's falling today. And that's why we anticipate major flooding in the mountains of western North Carolina. Now, the center of Helene is just starting to show up in the satellite picture. Our radar sites don't go all the way out into the Gulf. They only go out a certain distance. So we're just starting to see the leading edges of Helene work closer to the Gulf Coast. But it's going to get a lot worse in the next 24 hours. As far as our area goes, tonight we'll see those temperatures down into the 60s for lows and 70 degrees. Normal is 60, so we're going to be about 10 degrees above average tonight. And where it's not raining, it's so humid, you may see a little bit of patchy fog. 70 Rocky Mount, Wilson, 71 Goldsboro, 70 in Smithfield tonight. 69 in Carborough, 70 in Sanford, 68 in Roxborough, 72 in Fayetteville, 71 in Rayford, and 72 in Lumberton. Tomorrow for that morning drive, just a 10% chance of showers. The model does try to develop a shower around lunchtime. It's going to be very spotty through midday. Most of you will not see any rain tomorrow. But as we get into the afternoon, we get the instability in the atmosphere. We'll see a few showers and storms start to fire, and that's why we've got the clouds around tomorrow, so it won't be as warm as it was today. The clouds are going to hold back some of that sunshine. We were in the mid 80s in spots today. We actually went to like 87 in Raleigh. Tomorrow, a little cooler with the cloud cover and a passing shower in the afternoon, 80 degrees. I'll look at temperatures across the region tomorrow. 78 Carborough, 77 Siler City, 80 in Holly Springs, 81 Clayton, Garner, 80 in Wendell. Slide south, you'll see those numbers in the 80s, 82 Fayetteville, Lumberton, 80 Pinehurst, 79 Sanford, 82 in Goldsboro. You go north, 76 Roxborough, 79 Wake Forest, and 82 in Wilson. Your first alert 7-day forecast powered by AccuWeather. 80 tomorrow, 82 on Friday. You'll notice Friday's red. It's a first alert day. We do have the potential to see some rain, heavy at times, but also we will see the rain and the wind, and we do have a slight chance that an isolated tornado could spin up. Is it a big tornado outbreak day? No. We may not even see any in our area, but the potential is there to see one. So that's why we're making a first alert day to give you a heads up that you could see an isolated tornado spin up. We'll dry out on Saturday, just a stray shower, 84, Sunday 81, and cooler into the 70s next week. Coming up, we've got old school weather. We're going to talk everything Helene. Anything you want to know, we'll talk about it. We're going to break it down in old school weather. That's after this.
AccuWeather lead hurricane expert Alex De Silva joins us now from the AccuWeather Global Weather Center. Alex, it's good to have you here. Tell us why there is so much concern about inland flooding reaching parts of western North Carolina when it is hundreds of miles away from where Helene will actually be making landfall.
Yeah, well, Hurricane Helene is going to be very, very large in size, a lot bigger than your typical hurricane moving ashore here in northern Florida sometime during the day tomorrow. We're already starting to see some rain starting to spread across portions of the southeast, and that's due to a big upper level low that's coming through the southern plains, and that's actually what's going to be steering Helene to the north here as it starts to make landfall. But yeah, the concern is that due to Helene's size and it combining with this upper low that's coming in to meet with it, we're talking about potentially in this area here, western North Carolina included, in that higher elevations, 8 to 12 plus inches of rain, especially again in those higher elevations. And so even in areas that are hundreds of miles away from where the center of circulation is going to make landfall, we are very concerned with this storm about the potential of widespread flooding, especially there in the higher terrain.
And speak to the risk for power outages in the Carolinas and across the southeast once Helene pushes farther inland.
Yeah, the wind is really going to be surging to the north with this. Again, it's going to be because it's kind of merging with that area of low pressure, that dip in the jet stream. And that's really going to kind of make those winds really expand as the storm moves to the north. So normally all the winds are really concentrated down near where the storm makes landfall. But this is going to be very different. The winds are really going to be surging northward across portions of the western Carolinas there, especially in those higher elevations of North Carolina, where we can see winds of hurricane strength in some of those higher elevations. And so if we look at the power outage map here, we are talking about the potential for widespread power outages there across the higher terrain of western North Carolina.
And what about the threat of tornadoes? How far north will the threat of tornadoes extend from that Florida coast? And how are these tropical tornadoes any different from the other ones that we typically hear about in the supercell thunderstorms?
Yeah, well, tropical tornadoes typically occur on the eastern side of where the center of circulation is moving. So if the storm's moving like this, again, that's why we're highlighting everywhere east of that center of circulation. And so these tropical tornadoes can develop very, very quickly and with very little warning. So it's important that people have a way to receive warnings during this event as well. And they're very different from your typical tornadoes that you would see in the plains where you can kind of see them usually. These are going to be rain-wrapped tornadoes. So you're really not going to be able to see them coming, and they're going to be kind of hard to detect a lot of times. So again, the message is to really have a way to receive warnings as this event unfolds, because these tropical tornadoes can develop very, very quickly. They're typically not long lasting, but again, they can develop quickly and can produce damage across a small swath.
And I know you and your team down there, you're always monitoring the tropics for, excuse me, any potential trouble. Do you see any potential for another storm in the wake of Helene?
Yeah, well, this is what we have so far. We have a system that's way out across the Atlantic in yellow here. That's going to be moving away from the United States. Some good news there. It might acquire some subtropical characteristics. Maybe it gets a name here over the next couple of days, but overall, no threat to the U.S. This area down here, well to the southeast of the United States, that's going to be moving out to sea. It looks like it probably will develop, actually, but it probably will take a track somewhere like that, staying away from the U.S. coast. But those are the two areas we're tracking now. In the longer term, we really have to watch the beginning of October here as things really could get active. There's a few more tropical waves that are going to be coming off of the coast of Africa, some of which we definitely will want to pay attention to as we move into the month of October.
Alex De Silva, lead hurricane expert there at AccuWeather. Again, thank you so much for your expertise and for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And Dewan Hogard filling in this week for Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson's off, so Dewan, talking to our friends at AccuWeather. We'd like to award the first ever honorary meteorology cap to Dewan Hogard for helping out on the weather show. Thank you, Dewan, and thank you to Alex, and great information there. We're going to talk more about Helene in just a moment. Let's get to old school weather. I just wanted to hear that. I love the funky bass. Womp, womp, womp. And when we do old school weather, we call it old school weather because we do weather like they did back in the 90s. Say we're actually going to show you highs, lows, frontal boundaries, and then we'll break down what that means and what's headed in here. So if you're a weather geek, it's time for you to have a little fun with me. Let's show you what's happening on the old school map. We'll go into the northern part of the United States first. A little bit of a occluded front working its way toward Buffalo. Warm front trying to push into western portions of Maryland tonight. It did fire a few tornado warnings earlier as it worked through the mountains of West Virginia. This is a stationary front. This is what's been stuck right now over the western part of the state. On one side is cool air, on the other side is warm air. Neither one is winning. So if a front were a cold front, that means the cold air would be winning. If the front were a warm front, the warm air would be winning. Stationary front means they're both just stuck, and neither one of them is really winning. It's not going anywhere, and the moisture is just funneling right along this. That is terrible news for the mountains of North Carolina and South Carolina, because this moisture is working its way up and getting things primed and unfortunately making the ground very wet. And that has nothing to do with Helene. Helene is still well to the south. We're just starting to see the rain bands with it work their way in. There was a tornado warning in southwestern portions of Florida earlier this afternoon. Tampa's dry now, but showers working through Jacksonville and central Florida tonight. And if we zoom it out, there's lots of blue H's. This is just a computer trying to resolve where the biggest area of high pressure is. Basically, we could have one big blue H on there, and high pressure is representative of a lot of air packed into one place. Can't really go anywhere, can't cause problems, and so that's why it's blue, because you usually see blue skies, blue H, blue skies, and it really keeps the weather quiet through the Midwest. That's also what's going to help push the system away from us. We check on warnings tonight around the nation. We'll just check the East Coast real quick. It's relatively quiet on the West Coast. We did have a couple of tornado warnings and thunderstorm warnings firing earlier tonight in parts of upstate New York. And also there was a tornado warning earlier in western portions of Virginia. Watauga County now in North Carolina with a severe thunderstorm warning that is in effect until 7:30. They even had a possible tornado spin up out west of Charlotte tonight. So they're seeing some flood warnings out there already in East Tennessee, and that's just going to get worse as the moisture works up. We did have that tornado warning earlier west of Miami. We're not seeing any warnings right now down in Florida, but the initial rain bands are just starting to arrive. If we look at the latest European model, this is by 5 a.m. on Friday. You can see the European model brings Helene right through central Georgia. And unfortunately, the center of circulation is going to go right near Atlanta. They could see 60-mile-an-hour winds in Atlanta, and they could see flooding rainfall. This could be a massive mess inland. Everybody always thinks about the storm hitting the coast, and it's going to be catastrophic in the Big Bend area, but it could bring just terrible rainfall, flooding, and winds through central Georgia. Then it's going to work up through the mountains. It quickly moves out as we head Saturday, Sunday. By Sunday night, it's gone out here. It's kind of been washed out in the atmosphere. And we'll still see a little moisture left, but Saturday's looking relatively rain-free around here. Then Sunday, an isolated shower starts to fire. And then by Monday night, a little bit of moisture left in the atmosphere, and we will see a few more showers starting to fire as we get some cooler air working in. Let's talk tropics, tracking the tropics. Where are we as far as the storm goes? The peak is September 15th, so we're on the downhill of the tropical storm season. That being said, we do see a secondary peak right around October 1st, and that's where we're headed right now. It's just with all that warm water out there, we're not done with our tropical season just yet. So let's talk about Helene. Here are all the warnings out for the coast tonight, and notice hurricane warnings are in red. They extend clear up into central Georgia tonight. Panama City all the way down to Tampa with hurricane watches and warnings. The entire state of Florida and Georgia are both under either tropical storm warnings or hurricane warnings or both. So both those states are covered. East Alabama, South Carolina. And look what happens when we go into the mountains of North Carolina. I was checking with a meteorologist who works out in Asheville earlier. He said he does not remember seeing that many tropical storm warnings in western North Carolina ever. So this is, a warning means it's going to happen. They will see tropical storm force winds, and that extends from Charlotte up to Hickory and Banner Elk, all the way out to Walnut, Asheville, Cullowhee. That's where western Carolina is. They are under that. In Cullowhee, not only will they be dealing with tropical storm force winds, some very heavy rainfall moving in. We talk storm surge, and storm surge, we'll talk about what storm surge is and how it happens in just a moment. But look at the storm surge. Where we're seeing the red, that's 9+ feet of water that's going to push in. And I saw a NOAA advisory that came out today, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that said this will be catastrophic and unsurvivable for people in the Big Bend area. You need to evacuate or you will not live, which is very strong language from them. So here's what happens. With an area of low pressure and a tropical storm or hurricane, there's very little air in the middle part of it, and there's strong vertical motion. The air gets pulled up, and nature abhors a vacuum. So as it gets pulled up, it draws the water up, and it can actually make the water higher. This has nothing to do with wind. It's because there's not a lot of pressure pushing on the ocean. It's almost like sucking through a straw. It comes up the straw. As this is strong vertical motion, it sucks that water up, and it makes this surge of water that works in the storm surge. Winds increase, wave heights are increased because you've got wind blowing on them as well. And the depth of the surge depends on the strength of the hurricane. The stronger the hurricane, the deeper the depth. And you'll see storm surge in Category 3 can be, on average, and these numbers aren't exact, but on average, Category 3 hurricane, 9 to 12. Category 4, 13 to 18. Right now, Helene is forecast to see a 15-foot storm surge. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look. This is normal sea level right here. You're seeing some waves come in because of the wind, and wind is going to push water in, but that's not what the storm surge is. Remember, storm surge is sucking that water up. So in a minimal damage, you'll get a 3-foot storm surge, and that can come in, and it can, certainly the wind is a problem. It gets close to the house. Moderate to severe damage happens with a storm surge of 6 feet. Look what happens with this storm. 12+ feet, catastrophic, and 15 feet would put it above the rooftop. So that's why the National Weather Service and the NOAA are using such strong language to try and get people to evacuate, telling them they will not survive if they stay because so much water is headed in, and you can't be rescued. They can't fly helicopters in 180-mile-an-hour winds. Look at the wave heights. This has to do with the pressure being low and that water being sucked up. Some of these wave heights get up to 22, almost 30 feet out in the open ocean. Now, as it gets into the shallow water, this will go down a little bit, but still, right here in the Big Bend area, you're still seeing 22-foot high wave heights tomorrow night. And that's why they are so worried about that storm surge pushing in. Finally, the rainfall forecast. Here is the rainfall forecast, and look at the heavy rain down here. Yellow indicates 10 inches or more of rain. Parts of the Florida Panhandle could see 2 feet, 24 inches of rain. They're measuring rainfall in inches, in feet, not inches. The biggest swath is right here. And notice it comes right up into our mountains. 8 to 16 inches possible. This is why it's so scary for Cullowhee and Asheville, even up to Boone. Boone's kind of on the edge of this. They could see a foot of rain up there. Now, this has shifted to the west over the past couple of days. If you might remember, on Monday, we were in the 2 to 4 inch. We had a little more of the red out here. And as we're getting a better idea of the track of the storm, that shifts off to the west. And it is pushing those rainfall amounts out to the west. Nastiness headed our way over the next couple of days. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more about how the coasts are seeing a big surge of water and waves. We got a special package done by one of our great reporters, and of course we got viewer mail, and we're going to be talking about the smell of rain. Stay with us. And welcome back. Communities in Brunswick and New Hanover County are continuing to dry out after last week's just deadly storm that dumped 20 inches of rain in some spots. It's the 1,000-year storm that left much of coastal Carolina underwater. Sean Coffey speaking with climate experts who say these rare rain events are something we may just need to get used to.
Despite that term 1,000-year event, meteorological experts say there have been 9 storms just along the Carolina coast here that would meet that definition in just the last 25 years. They say that's a trend they expect to continue, meaning that areas like Carolina Beach could continue to face the brunt of coastal flooding.
When we talk about 500-year, 1,000-year flood event or 10-year flood event, it doesn't mean it can't happen 2 months from now. It doesn't mean it can't happen next year.
It was the nameless storm few people outside the climatological field saw coming.
Those storms didn't go anywhere, and the atmosphere was such that it was the storms were perfect engines.
Potential tropical cyclone 8 dumping over 1.5 feet of rain along the Carolina coast, with some areas seeing more than 20 inches. Most of that falling in a 12-hour span, leading to one of the worst coastal flood events in recent memory.
The fire hose is the best way to describe it in a station.
Paff is the meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service's Wilmington office.
And I think it just goes to really teach us again that it doesn't have to have a name to have impacts associated with it.
Steve says the term 1,000-year event relates to the probability a storm or flood event could occur in a given year, in this case, 0.1%. But they're on the rise in North Carolina, 9 of them in the last 25 years.
The problem that we're seeing is a lot of these multi-100-year, 1,000-year events that have occurred just in our office's area of responsibility has increased markedly since Hurricane Floyd in 1999.
Despite many residents being caught off guard, Kathy Dello with the State Climate Office of North Carolina says it wasn't the forecasts that were off, but the communication.
Some of the models had 15 plus inches of rain in them, but we're talking about forecasting things that haven't happened in the past.
Dello believes warmer water and air in the atmosphere are supercharging these storms and pushing the limits of North Carolina weather.
We've been having this weather whiplash here in North Carolina, swinging back and forth between extremes. The dry is really dry and the wet is really wet. It's tough to prepare for both.
Dello says there were areas not far from Carolina Beach here that received 4 to 6 inches in this storm, meaning that forecasts for those communities were largely accurate. On the whole, though, this is an area that is seeing a lot more rainfall than they did a few generations ago. PAF says 15 inches more annually on average than 100 years ago. That's a trend, again, he expects to continue, meaning being climate aware, as he puts it, will be more important than ever. In Carolina Beach, Sean Coffey, ABC 11, Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Sean. It is time for that segment we like to call Viewer Mail. We love to hear from you. Let's see what our question is tonight. It comes from Tito in Fayetteville. Tito wrote, why can I smell whenever rain is coming? You can smell it in the air. Well, there's actually a couple of reasons for this, Tito. The smell of rain may be actually one of 3 things. Number one, soil and bacteria in the soil-dwelling bacteria will secrete this geosmin when it produces spores. So there's all this bacteria down there, it produces spores, and the raindrops hit it and it will release those spores. That can create one of the smells. It might be plants. They actually secrete oils during very dry periods. So if you've had a really dry period for a long time, the rain will cause the compounds to be released from the oils in the plants. That smell is called petrichor. One of my favorite weather words, petrichor, the smell of rain. That usually comes from either plants or soil-dwelling bacteria. And once in a while, lightning can actually split oxygen molecules into their individual atoms. And those atoms combined with oxygen molecules to make O3, which is ozone. Ozone has its own distinct smell. So it can be one of those 3 things. Usually around here in North Carolina, it's either from the bacteria or from the oils being washed down. Tito, hopefully that helps you out. Finally, we want to show you the weather pick. This one coming to us from Falls Lake. This was taken by Paul Staley sailing off into the clouds of Falls Lake. Gorgeous picture, Paul. Thanks for sending that in. We want to see your pictures. abc11.com/share. And when we come back, we'll have that coffee forecast for you. Stay with us. Welcome back. We like to end every weather show with your coffee forecast tomorrow morning. Those temperatures in the 70s and just an isolated shower chance. Take the umbrella with you, though. Those showers will fire later in the day. Thanks so much for spending part of your Wednesday with us. We love having you here. We'll see you every Wednesday for the weather show. And as we round it out tonight, we're watching the showers. Should any turn severe, we'll let you know. Have a great night.